Hi guys, in this tutorial, I'm going to take you through the process of budget reconciliation. By budget reconciliation, we're simply saying you've done your activity, you've come back from the activity, and now you are reconciling your costs that you encountered during the activity with the revised budget. The prerequisite for you to do your reconciliation is your budget should have been revised. So if you need a recap on the revised budget, feel free to take a look at the video for the budget revision. All right, so let's get cracking with budget reconciliation. So we need to navigate to the reconciliations folder and go to the main reconciliations and go to the first matrix, perform activity recons, PA. So this is our matrix where we do our budget reconciliation. And remember, the activity needs to be revised. So how do you know the activity has been revised? It will appear in this list of activities. So what it simply means is if your activity is not appearing in that list of activities, it might not have been revised. You need to go through the process of budget revision. All right, so here in this list, let's assume that we want to revise this activity. Let's go for in-country workshop risk-based supervision in Basel 2. So that activity will appear here at the bottom as well. The next thing that you should do is to select the venue in which the activity took place. So let's assume that the activity took place, we know it happened in Zimbabwe because the code starts with a ZW. What we simply need to select is the hotel or venue at which the activity took place. I'm going to assume that it took place in Holiday in Harare. So we go ahead and select the dates. Since this is a 2017 activity, judging from this code, we need to select 2017 dates. So I'm going to assume the activity took place between the 6th and the 10th of February 2017. The next thing we need to do is to capture the receipts. By receipts, we're saying as you went for the activity, some funds were disbursed to you. So you need to capture those funds in this receipt section. So let's assume that a hotel deposit was done and it was a hotel deposit of $500. Let's also assume that there was an amount deposited on your card and the amount was $10,000 and there was cash received and it was $500. So assuming that these are the three disbursements that were done, we are going to use these to reconcile our activity. So the way we do that is we select activity costs associated with the activity here. So I'm going to assume that there was a resource person. Maybe let's just say there was an international resource person. There was also that is for accommodation. Let's under facilities and materials, we can select a line. We can also select a line under any one of these categories. But an easier way is to start by auto-populating the revised budget and do the reconciliation from there. So we can auto-populate the revised budget and edit that to come up with our activity reconciliation. So I'm going to make use of the clear recon data button here, which essentially clears everything. Let me just replace what we have there, and I'm going to auto-populate the revised budget. But first of all, I need to select the activity, which is this activity there. Then we auto-populate the budget. So this is the revised budget for the activity. All we need to do is to adjust it according to what happened on the day of the activity or during the period at which the activity took place. So taking a look at this, we might want to edit what we have under these parameters here so that it matches what happened on the ground. So let's assume that on accommodation resource persons international, the unit cost was actually $90. So we can go ahead and edit that to $90. I'm going to edit that to 250, and maybe this was actually the unit cost there was actually 2,500, like that. And since this activity happened in Zimbabwe, we are budgeting everything in the base currency, which is US dollar there. Right, let's assume that you wanted to change the budgeting multiplier. I'm going to assume that the budgeting multiplier there is for my resource persons international, instead of per person per day, let's assume that it was actually per person. So it means it will disregard days. So I'll simply come here and say the number of persons was 2 persons, and so what it simply does is now multiplying the number of persons times the unit cost to come up with that. So I'm just going to undo that so that we return to our position. I just wanted to illustrate to you that you can change the budgeting multiplier there. So let's remove that. All right, so assuming that this is exactly what you want on your reconciliation, the next thing you do is to select the funding source. I'm going to assume that all of this was funded by MEFMI funds. Right, so having done that, you've got these two columns: payments made in original currency and payments allocated in original currency. I'm going to assume that the payments made to pay this 150, we had actually made a payment of, sorry, to pay this amount of 450 was actually 450, and 450 was paid to cover for that. So in other words, I'm just saying everything was paid for as is. So I'm going to paste that and paste that. So at this stage, what it simply means is all of these costs were actually paid an equivalent amount, which is that. All right, so at this stage now, I need to allocate now the source of funds. And let's assume that the first, let's say the first cost was paid for using the hotel deposit, right? The next 3 costs were paid for using amount deposited on bank card. And the rest of those were paid using cash. Right, now we've allocated our source of funds. So take note, the moment we update that, this table or summary on top will now summarize for us what happened in terms of amount deposited on bank account, on bank card. We had 10,000, we spent 9,700, giving us a surplus of $300. Cash received 500, used 450, surplus $50. Hotel deposit, were given $500, we used 450 to give us a surplus of $50. So overall, our surplus is $400. Right, so the reason why we skipped these 2 columns is we assumed our activity happened in Zimbabwe. Therefore, everything was done using the base currency of USD. In another example, I'll show you how to make use of the base currency, the currency to base currency relationship, and the exchange rate to convert unit cost columns. Let's assume that one of these costs was in kind. Let's assume that this travel cost for the resource person international was covered by their member country. So essentially it becomes in kind. This 2,500 is in kind. So to move that 2,000 to in kind, we simply need to remove it from this MEFMI cash side. I'm going to completely remove it from the MEFMI cash. and move it to in kind. So to move it to in kind, let me just remove whatever is on the in kind section for now. So to move it to in kind, I'm going to remove it completely and move it to this side where I would say it's one person at a unit cost of 2,500 and the currency is USD. So our amount is now on the in-kind section of our budget. So remember, you need to capture here the number of units, unit cost in original currency, but in the payments made in original currency and payments allocated in original currency, you leave that blank and move it to the in-kind section just like that. Alright, so at this stage, assuming that you're happy with your recon, you've got the option to submit it or store it. Why do you need to store your recon? In case you're still working on it, you might need to store it for the moment until the next time you return to the recon. So to store an activity, you simply need to look at the storage compartments with the green sections above them. So in this case, you can store your activity in store rec 3 or store recon 5. So I'm going to store it in number 3. And notice the moment you store a recon, it will disappear from this particular screen. If you need to recall the recon, simply go to the same storage compartment and click on the retrieve button at the bottom. And your recon will be retrieved as is. So the next thing that we want to do is to submit this particular recon. To submit a recon, you need to have made sure that you tick the submit recon tick box. So let's tick on the submit recon tick box. And before we submit, there's one thing that we need to do. We need to enter comments. You notice that this status light is red, highlighting that you need to capture your comments. And to capture your comments, simply navigate to recon comments input. So on here, you can comment on any figure that you see on the summary here. So to assist you with that, we have highlighted in red any areas where you have variances in the negative. So in this case, we had budgeted for 280. We ended up spending 3,000, giving us a deficit of 2,720. So you can type a comment against that to explain why you have such a big deficit. So the moment you're done with your commenting, you can return back to your recon and now you are able to submit it. So let's go recon. We click on the submit recon button.